you looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub 2 Deals Show with your host, Sub 2 expert William Tingle.
Hey Sub 2ers, my name is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com, and I would like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to, how to get the deed, turning leads into deeds, and all the rest. Today's topic is deal structure. I've had that topic submitted as a request for us to cover, so in the interest of giving you guys the information you need to get some deeds, we're covering it today. So how do you structure a subject to deal? When you talk about deal structure, know that you can be talking about a lot of different things. Deal structure can mean a step-by-step of how you put the deal together. This means from the time you pick up the phone when the seller calls you to what contracts are best to use, how to handle insurance, taxes, how best to deal with the bank to get information. Do you need to use a title company or close it yourself? Right down to handling negotiations with a seller. Hey, that kind of sounds like another episode, doesn't it? I'll have to add that to my list. The deal structure can also mean evaluating the numbers and the actual property itself. Things like location, condition, number of bedrooms and baths, to make a decision on how, and even if, the property can be utilized in your overall investment strategy. For example, if the interest rate is too high to make sense for cash flow, but the property has good equity, maybe it should be a get the deed and retail flip deal. If there's not a tremendous amount of equity, but the property condition's good and the interest rate on the loan is really good, and it's in a great neighborhood where families want to live, maybe a get the deed, sell it with owner financing is in order. Or you could even rent it out or lease option if that's your thing. For our purposes of talking deal structure today, we're going to be talking about the latter and how to figure your best exit strategy based on the numbers in the property. I'm also going to be sharing with you my thought process that I use in determining if I'm even going to take the deal at all or not. And no, I don't take every deed that is offered to me, and you shouldn't either. Don't make somebody else's problem your problem. If you've been following me for a while, you already know I'm not interested in a rental, a rehab, or a lease option, either buying or selling, at all. I'm only interested in deals that will allow me to add another home run down payment, grand slam cash flow, or monster back-end profit, seller financed property to my portfolio. Period. This is a change I made in my business about 9 years ago, and it's all I do today. Several years ago, I made a decision to simplify my business, and that is exactly what I did. When you simplify, it makes your life so much less complicated, and I've found it to be much more profitable. Today, my business conforms to my lifestyle and not the other way around. So, enough of that. On to the deal structure. First, let's briefly touch on the basics of Sub 2 again. When you buy a property subject to the existing loan, what you're doing is asking the seller who has a property and a mortgage on that property to transfer the title or deed the property to you. So they sign over the deed, you take over the property, and you start making the payments on their existing loan. You're not going to qualify for that loan. You're just going to take over the payments. You're going to transfer the insurance into your name or your trust or LLC if that's how you roll. And you're going to start making the tax payments as well. So you're going to be paying principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on the property. Now, if you're like me, your plan will most likely be to go out and find someone to buy that property from you with seller financing. They'll give you a down payment. They'll make payments to you every month. And at some point down the road, and we like the 3-year plan, they'll refinance, at which time the seller's original loan will be paid off and you will receive your back-end profit on the deal. So in this scenario, you'll make money up front in the form of a down payment. You'll make monthly payments as cash flow, and you'll make money on the back end when they pay you off. But you could also rent it out or lease option it or sell it for retail or even live in it yourself. You own it, so you can do whatever you want. Now, let's say you find a seller who is agreeable with a subject to sale. Maybe he has to move for a job transfer. Maybe he's getting a divorce. It could be one of 1,000 different reasons. And he has a property that has got a $150,000 mortgage on it with an interest rate of 4%, and let's say the property's worth around $170,000. Now, these are fairly common scenarios where the seller's equity would barely cover a realtor's fee to sell. And if he sells to you, that's going to give him a much faster, more certain outcome. If he sells with a realtor, it may be listed for 6 months. He'll have to make payments. If he has to move in the meantime, he's going to have to make payments on that house and maybe another apartment or house. But selling to you gives him some certainty and some finality. So that's an advantage to selling to you. These deals are found every day. The house is in good shape and it needs no repairs. Now, based on the interest rate on the seller's loan, remember it's 4%, the equity spread that you'll get on this between your buy and sell price is $29,000. The monthly cash flow that you can get from this deal is going to be around $450 a month, and the condition of the house is excellent. So my first choice, of course, would be to seller finance. But let's look at all of our options. Okay, like we said, first off, you can sell with seller financing. You find a buyer and you sell it for $179. Now, this is marked up, of course, just a little bit from the $170 we said it was worth, but trust me, if the house is truly worth $170 and you were to call 3 appraisers, I guarantee you getting a $179 price would be no problem. And you're only talking about marking it up 7 or 8%, and in a just decent market, that's totally doable. So you find a buyer and you sell it for $179, and your buyer gives you a $15,000 down payment. Now, $15,000 down on a $179,000 house with a marginal credit buyer, maybe they can't prove their income, whatever the reason they couldn't get traditional financing, that's a totally fair down payment, and it happens all the time. It's not the 10% that we like to get, which in this case would be $18,000, but it's pretty close, and it's enough in it to where it would really be a loss, so your buyer can't just walk away if something happens. They would think twice about that. So you collect the $15,000 down payment. Now, your monthly payment on the seller's loan is $950 a month. Your buyer's payment to you on the loan that you make to them is $1,400. So you're making $450 a month in positive cash flow. The interest rate on your seller's loan is 4%, and the rate you're going to give your buyer is 7%. When your buyer refinances in a few years, you will receive a payoff of around $20,000, and that'll give you a total profit on this deal of over $50,000. As you can see, a $50,000 profit on a low equity deal is why I absolutely love buying subject to. And selling with seller financing is great. But remember, you do have some other options with this property.
The Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, do you want to learn how to get the deed but need a little help getting started? Want to learn how to fill out the paperwork, how to use a land trust, how to market for deals, how to negotiate with sellers, and more? Join us in the Sub2 Deals Facebook coaching group. Get the benefits of one-on-one coaching without the big price tag. Learn to do Sub2 right with coaching in a group setting and mastermind format. Head over to sub2deals.com right now and click on Consulting and Group Coaching. We'll save you a seat. Back to the show, the Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Selling with seller financing is great, but remember, you do have some other options with this property. You could rent it out. The great condition of the house and no back payments to make up would mean that you wouldn't have any cash to lay out up front. You could collect your deposit, and let's say rents were $1,200 a month. You could get in with nothing out of pocket, immediately start collecting what appears to be a $250 a month positive cash flow. But remember, as a landlord, you're responsible for repairs. And one big repair in a year, such as an air conditioner or water heater replacement, and that $3,000 in positive cash flow for the year, it's gone. You could also lease option this deal out. Someone would probably be able to give you $5,000 as option consideration, and you should be able to collect a slightly higher than market rent. So let's say you could collect $1,300 of rent from your buyer. Now you have $5,000 in your pocket up front and have a $350 a month in positive cash flow. But remember, contrary to what some people will tell you, you can't pass off repairs to a tenant optioner in all cases. In a lot of places, it's illegal to do. And while your tenant optioner may agree to do them, I always found when I got a lease option property back, there was this little thing called deferred maintenance to deal with. Repairs that didn't get made that needed to be made. Expect those things to eat into your $5,000 up front and $350 a month you collected, not to mention paying for any repairs that may happen while they occupy the property. Still, lease optioning is better than a straight rental in my opinion. Now, selling retail would not be a good option for this deal. Even though it's in good shape, it doesn't really need any repairs, and has a great interest rate, there's simply not enough equity to sell retail. Even if you were able to sell it for sale by owner, if you had to hold it for a few months before you sold, covering the payments and maintenance, and then the seller needed any closing cost assistance, the cost to sell would be substantial, leaving you with as little as $5,000 or less in profit. And that's just too much financial risk for such a small reward, in my opinion. Now, if this property had a horrible interest rate but considerable equity and even needed some repairs, it might be a candidate for a retail flip. And regarding retail flips, let me give you an actual example of one of the deals that I did several years ago. I was driving around in a neighborhood one Saturday morning and had gotten a little lost. So I was turning around in the driveway of a home in one of the nicer subdivisions in town when a guy yelled at me from his garage. Just when I thought he was going to fuss me out for using his driveway to turn around in, he said, "Hey, you buy houses?" Now, I guess the guy had seen the magnetics on my truck, and I'm telling you, this has happened 1,000 times. I don't know why. People see the magnetics on your truck or your car. I mean, they're an obnoxious orange, yellow color with big blue letters, "We buy houses." And their question to you is always the same: "Hey, do you buy houses?" Well, my obvious response to his question was, yeah, that's what the sign says. So he told me he needed to sell his house. So I said, "Sure, let's take a look." Well, they obviously had children because the carpets were stained. There were Kool-Aid stains all over the place. And it needed interior paint, but otherwise it was in pretty good shape. I figured the houses in that area were worth around 140,000 or so in top shape, but this one was going to need about 10,000 to put it there. He said he knew the house needed work and he really just wanted out. His wife was she wasn't a doctor, but she was pretty high up in there. She wasn't a nurse. She was somewhere in between. I can't really remember what job she had, but she was very highly paid and she'd gotten a transfer to Tennessee. She'd been gone for several months and had left him to sell the house. And he'd called a couple of agents, but they were also focused on the Kool-Aid stains and the crayon marks on the wall. They all pretty much said the same thing. "Listen, you're going to have to do some work to this house before we're going to list it." And he just didn't have the money to do it. So he was kind of at a loss of what to do. And then I just, happened to turn around in his driveway that morning. He said, "Listen, I know the house needs work. I just want out of it." He only owed $88,000 to Bank of America. But gosh, his interest rate was 13%. It was just too high to use as a rental or make any money on even the front end with seller financing, because you'd have to use 10,000 to make your repairs, and then the 13% interest rate made the payment so high that you wouldn't get any monthly cash flow. The house did have equity, but the only real payday in that play would be a back end payoff after your buyer had been in for a while. And I got to tell you, I'm just not real good at waiting on payday. The higher equity and great location let me take the deed on this one and do a quick retail flip. All I did was put a sign in the yard, and within a week, had a contract with a newly married couple for $105,000. Now, they were pre-approved, and because the repairs weren't major or structural, they were just cosmetic, it didn't interfere with the closing and their pre-approval, so it went through pretty much without a hitch. They got a $140,000 house for $105,000. They told me they were going to do the repairs themselves, and it wasn't going to cost them but about $5,000 to do that. So that meant that this couple got a $30,000 instant equity in this house. I got a check for over $15,000 in just a couple of weeks, and my seller sold his house. So it was a win for everybody. Remember, you can do anything with a sub-2 deal that you can do with any other property. Subject to is simply a form of financing. Now, that's a very, very good form of financing, but it is just financing. It's not a magic wand that you can wave over a marginal or bad deal and make it good. What you have to do is learn to look at the property and the numbers on the financing to learn how to effectively and profitably structure the deal. Buying a property by getting the deed is an incredible tool to acquire real estate. When you buy subject to, you own the house, but you're not on the loan. You don't have to qualify for a loan. You don't have to have a down payment. You don't have to have good credit, but you still have total control of the property with actual ownership. And the great thing about these deals, it is so incredibly simple to pick up several of them a year. They're all over the place, and you're only limited by how many you want to do. I hope this has helped you guys better understand subject to and deal structure as it relates to planning your exit by evaluating the property and the numbers. If you have any questions regarding this subject, please join our Facebook group. Just search for Subject to Real Estate Forum with William Tingle, or you can visit us at sub2deals.com. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes or visit our podcast page on Facebook at Sub2 Deals Podcast. Thanks for listening. Now get out there and buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub2 Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com, on Facebook at Sub2 Deals. We'll catch you next time.